Alright guys, how's it going? It's BA. I'm finally back with another YouTube video. I know it's been forever, but did some upgrades to my computer. Finally got a new graphics card after waiting forever and ever. Waited like a year or so, and I was able to get one. I got an RX 6800 compared to my old graphics card. I play some games here and there, also do some video editing. So I'm going to show you guys the differences between my old card, my new card, and even some performance on the differences of editing and how long it takes to render videos, because this is so much better. Stay tuned. Alright guys, like I said, I got a new graphics card, and let's talk about the old one first. The old graphics card I used to have was an old MSI R9 390. Now, I know the times now would be like, oh my gosh, that card is worth $200, $250. That's just because of the whole market. Everybody knows the GPU market right now kind of sucks. But for what I was wanting to do, obviously take it to the next level in a lot of my games, I couldn't do it with that old card. It was cool, but I just couldn't do what I wanted to. So I actually ended up getting a new graphics card, and the crazy way of getting a new graphics card, unfortunately, had to get someone to essentially get a new computer and then take the graphics card from the new computer and then give them an older graphics card. But nonetheless, I was able to get one, and the one that I got was the XFX SWFT 319. And it does everything. It's an RX 6800. Can't go wrong with it. Can't go wrong with it at all. I mean, it's not a Merc card. I think those actually look cooler, but honestly, I just wanted to get something that was going to perform. Because of my old card, the R9 390, unfortunately with that card, for some reason, you couldn't do HDMI and do 4K 60. It was only HDMI 4K 30, and I think it was just because it was an HDMI 1.4 instead of a 2.0. But that was horrible because I have this awesome 65-inch TV that I wanted to play 4K or I knew I really couldn't play 4K 60 on that card, but I at least wanted to do like 1440p 60 on some games. I couldn't even do that. Anything 4K or 1440p had to be at 30 frames through HDMI. If you did it through, for instance, DisplayPort, you could do up to 4K 60, but it can't really play. It's not a 4K card. So I went ahead, got this one, and we're going to go over some games. We're going to go over and see exactly what I can run and what I can't run. So the first game we're going to go over is Insurgency. Now, Insurgency Sandstorm, it's really not a hard game to run. And the weird thing about it is, technically, as you can see, I have the R9 390, and it's saying that I can definitely run it. The minimum settings are, for sure, run it. But there's a big old red nah, your card can't run it under recommended. And I don't know why, because honestly, the recommendation is 5.1 pixel shader, vertex shader 5.1, so it could run technically any game, but I mean, for what I wanted to run it on, definitely couldn't do it. And then if we look at the next one, Jedi Fallen Order, same deal. I could run these games no problem. I have the latest pixel and vertex shaders on the R9 390. Resident Evil 2, same deal. Tekken, I like to play Tekken a lot. Could run it no problem, and I did. I ran it at 1080p 60, not an issue. Now Terminator, whole different deal. Terminator was, I think, the worst game, and I don't know why this happened. But I had it running on my 65-inch 4K TV, and I think what was going on is, for some reason, I could not lower the resolution to 1080p. I couldn't do it. I couldn't lower it. So I played this game all the way to 4K 30 FPS. It was a horrible experience. I can't believe I did it. I knew something was wrong from the jump because the frame rate was just horrible. But I powered through this game, and lo and behold, I should have just ran it on one of my 1080p monitors, but I'd rather actually just play this game, type of game, on a big screen. And it was trash. It was a trash experience. So definitely, I completely understand that this is not a recommended card. Now, I think it's saying not recommended because even though the R9 390 has enough power to essentially power through these games, I don't think it has, for instance, like I said, it doesn't have HDMI 2.0. And then these are just some of the things that, really would help out if I could just go in there, lower the resolutions, and then if I have to, or games that don't require a lot of power, I could just go 4K 60. That would be great, but it doesn't have HDMI 2.0 on some of these, and I just didn't feel like running. At the time I only had 1080p monitor, so it was pointless to go DisplayPort. That wasn't going to give me anything new. So I don't know. It was just a horrible experience. But let's go ahead and move on to some of these graphs that I have for you guys. We're going to start off with a game that I don't have for the Can I Run It, but we're going to start off with GTA 5. Okay, GTA 5, as you can see, I was getting a lot of, now this is with the R9 390. Okay, and by the way, my system, I didn't even explain the specs of my system, I feel bad. It's an AMD Ryzen 7 2700X. AMD Ryzen 2700X with 32 gigs of Corsair DDR4. Now, it says it's running here on 2133. I actually got it running 2066, which is not the fastest timing, but it is currently running at 2066 now. As you can see, my FPS is just all over the place. For the most part, at 1080p, it rocks it at a pretty good 60 FPS. There's dips, obviously. Usually the average I was getting was around 53. But as you can see, I was getting dips way, in a 30 FPS dips, 29s, and that's just unacceptable to me in 1080p. That was horrible. So even though my average FPS was around 53, a lot of the time it did try to stay up in the 60 FPS mark. And like I said, there were some hard dips just playing GTA 5. And then as we move on to Insurgency at 1080p with the R9 390, as you can see, the average is it's a pretty good average, 83 FPS. And I mean, I was getting even 100 FPS at 1080p with that R9 390. So not a bad card. That card is a rocking card, actually. It's pretty solid. And I'm actually pretty impressed with the performance of that card. It was a really good performance, what I was getting from Insurgency. Now, obviously, there were some dips, but the dips weren't really that bad. I mean, I could deal with dips going down to 60 FPS, 51 FPS. Anything obviously 35 and below is horrible. But that was like very, very, very rare that I would get dips going down to 35 FPS. So, yeah, I mean, solid card. Next, we're going to move into Jedi Fallen Order. Now, this game was pretty solid as well at 1080p. I played this game 1080p 60 on the R9 390. Worked great. As you can see, the average was around 56. And for the most part, it definitely had a lot of times it did stay up in the 60 FPS margin. Very rare did I ever get dips that were going down to like 30 FPS. It was just really rare. So for the most part, I mean, it's pretty solid. Really solid gaming experience for the R9 390, at least at 1080p, right? And then we're going to go ahead and move into RE2, Resident Evil 2. Now, this game also was a big surprise. I didn't even know it was running so great, but I mean, my average was around 100 frames per second running this game at 1080p. I mean, obviously it got lower here and there. There were some frame spikes and things like that, but I mean, 100 FPS average, that's solid. That is very, very solid. And I had a great experience playing this game at 1080p. Very rare that it dropped down below 60 at all. So that's that engine, the RE engine is amazing. I really think that's a good engine. And then let's move into Rise of the Tomb Raider. So Rise of the Tomb Raider, awesome game. Played that 1080p 60, and for the most part, the average was around 57 frames. And you know, throughout the whole gaming experience, it rarely dipped. I actually had a really good experience playing Tomb Raider as well. Another game that I play here and there is Shadow Warrior. And you know, with the R9 390 Shadow Warrior, there's not much I can say. I mean, it's 1080p, but I was getting around 98 FPS in this game. Solid. It's good experience for 1080p. Great experience. Like a lot of these games, I really honestly didn't have issues. Really any issues at all like that. And then let's move into Tekken 7. Now, Tekken 7 is interesting. It's a fighting game. Obviously, frames really do matter in fighting games. I was getting around 58 FPS, it looks, for the average, and then for the most part it was staying at 60. There was definitely some frame spikes that was dropped, like big frame drops. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just really strange for Tekken. But sometimes, like, especially when you're doing like the loading, it drops to 30 FPS, and then when it's actually in game, it jumps back up to 60. But yeah, for the most part, I played a lot of Tekken on that card and really didn't have any issues. Now let's go into the stats for Terminator. So if we look at Terminator, now this was running at 4K, and as you can see, average was 26 frames per second. Absolutely trash. Garbage. I don't even want to look at that. That makes me feel bad, because I'm like, man, like that was rough. That was really rough. If we go into Wolfenstein Old Blood, I was getting 100 frames per second average. I had a solid time playing Wolfenstein at 1080p. Really not a problem. It rarely dropped anything below 30, but it didn't even go to 30 pretty much. It was like drops, 100 to like 60 FPS for the most part. Sometimes it would drop a little bit lower on certain scenes, but I mean, beautiful, fantastic experience. And I really didn't even know better. Like, I knew it was a good card, but I was like, for 1080p, I didn't know, what 4K 60 felt and looked like. I was just like, yeah, I mean, obviously I know PC gaming, it's gonna look a lot better, it's gonna run better, but then I put in the RX 6800, and oh man, a whole deal changed. Like, it has been great ever since. So let me go ahead and jump right into these stats. When I put that RX 6800 in, let's go into GTA 5 1440p. I mean, 1440p average, I was getting 75 FPS. And by the way, 1440p maxed out, and I was getting 75 FPS. Like, it looks amazing. And I thought 1080p, when I had it on the R9 390, I was running GTA 5, probably about like high settings. Nothing was really maxed out to the ultra. But yes, amazing. It looks great. I have to say that. And then let's go into Insurgency 4K maxed out. This game, amazing. And I was getting around 79 FPS maxed out. 4K in Insurgency. Like, it looks amazing, it runs amazing, and whenever I play it on my 1440p monitor, I usually play Insurgency 1440p first off, so that 79 FPS, that's more like in the hundreds, 1440p, and it looks amazing, maxed out 1440p, and buttery smooth. I mean, my monitor here is 144 hertz, so I'm playing at 144 frames per second, and it's so smooth. I can only imagine what like 240 hertz feels like, but I mean, I don't even know if I can tell a difference, but 144 frames per second and playing in FPS, amazing. But yeah, for 4K, great. I'm getting 4K 79 average FPS. You can't beat that. You can't beat that. And then let's go ahead and move into Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I mean, 4K maxed out. I'm getting about 59, 60 FPS at all times. Very rarely would I ever see it dip down to 30 FPS, but it's usually between 60 FPS, 53 FPS, depending on what you're doing. And man, what a solid experience. Like, it looks great in 4K. Man, it's such a difference. Like, it is 4K gaming. It is a difference. It's not like the holy grail, but let me tell you, even from jumping to 1440p to 4K, it is definitely a difference. You can see it. Everything just looks so crisp. I love it. I love it. So that's Jedi Fallen Order. Let's move right into RE2, 4K maxed out, and this game surprised me. This game ran great on the R9 390. I'm getting 106 FPS, 4K maxed out. That is awesome. That is so solid. Like, that is amazing. That is amazing. I'm sorry. And it looks great. It runs great. It ran great on the R9 390, but man, on this RX 6800, it looks amazing. It looks amazing. Let's move into Rise. Rise of the Tomb Raider, 4K maxed out. Now this game also runs great. 4K maxed out, we're looking at 71 FPS. Like, and that's maxed out. I mean, and for a game like that, it's not like something like where you really need 120 FPS or 144 FPS or 240 FPS. Running it at 71, a stable 70 or 60 and above, I mean, to me, that's great. Now, obviously, there's the purists that want to always run their games at 120, and then if I want to run it at 120, I drop it to 1440p. But 4K, maxed out, Rise of the Tomb Raider, oh man, solid, and it looks great. Solid game. Let's move into Tekken 4K maxed out. I'm getting a pretty average 60 FPS for Tekken 4K maxed out, and it's great. It's great. A solid 60 FPS. So I cannot complain. It looks so much better. And then the big one that I wanted to talk about here was Terminator. And as you guys remember, Terminator was just horrible. I could play it at 4K 30 because I couldn't change it. But I have good news. 4K 60 FPS is not a problem. Actually, the average maxed out is 86 FPS. And it looks and runs amazing on this new card. Like, it's so much better. It looks so much better. I mean, I felt like, I don't want to like make fun of the game, but when I ran it and I played it the first time, it looked like there was just this layer of like butter or something just like over the screen, and just seemed all washy, and like it just didn't look good. It didn't look good at all. So running this game maxed out 4K and as smooth as it does, it's a completely different game. Like, it is a completely different game. I can't explain to you guys how much frame rate matters, but also how much resolution and just being able to turn your graphics setting up matter. Like, it can make your game turn into like something you loved into something that you found a new love maybe 2 or 3 years after the game came out. Like, it just really changes the way the game runs. And then I have Wolfenstein Old Blood maxed out 4K. Runs very, very strange. Now, as you guys can remember, the old card, the R9 390, ran this game at like, I could run it at 100 FPS, right? 1080p. For some reason, something strange happened in this game where when I took it to 4K, it was only running it at 36 FPS, and I don't know why. And 1440p absolutely runs better. I'm getting amazing frame rates at 1440p. But 4K, I can't get this game to run. I can't. If I max it out, I'm only getting 36 FPS, which is, to me, unplayable for an FPS. And I don't know what's going on with this game. I don't know why, for some reason, it's got weird. But yeah, it just was not running this game fluent on this new card, and I don't know why. But I mean, I usually play at 1440p, but yeah, something was going on with Wolfenstein, and it was the anomaly, I guess you could say, that I've never really seen before. I've never seen that happen in a game where you can run something at 1080p, almost 100 FPS, and then you get a new card like this, and then it runs it at, even I know it's like 4 times the resolution, but at the same time, 30 FPS? Like, it was really strange. I don't know what's going on with Wolfenstein. I have to dive into that a little bit more. But I will say, if I drop it to 1440p, it runs it very smooth. I'm getting well over 100 FPS in 1440p. So not a problem, but 4K, something's going on with that. I don't know why, but something's going on with that one. But other than that, it's a solid card. I'm gonna go over the differences of rendering times, but I mean, I can't complain at all. I really can't. I'm back in it. I finally have a card now. My computer is running stable. I can play pretty much anything next-gen games as good, if not better, as the PS5 or the Xbox Series X can. So I'm running good. I cannot complain. I also didn't overclock anything. Everything is running at stock clock. The temperatures are great. I'm usually getting around like 50 degrees. I've seen it jump up to like 65 degrees Celsius. But I went ahead and at a 12-minute video in Premiere, I exported it on the old one, exported it in the new one. Times were definitely different. I had an MPEG-4 was the codec. Got 12 minutes and 58 seconds on the old card, and I got 9 minutes and 15 seconds on the new card. So definitely a big difference when it comes to exporting video. This card does it way faster, way better on exports. I cannot complain. This is the way to go. I'm happy with my system. And now that everything is better, that means more videos coming for you guys. I hope you guys like it. It's my first time really doing like a tech video, even though this is really not a tech video. But I hope you guys like the review. I hope you guys are enjoying the content, and I'll be back. You guys have a great rest of your year, and I'll see you guys next year. Peace.